Hello, my name is Rob Grant and I would like to tell you about the QED module, which is a Level 5 methods module open to students on all courses, which I teach with my colleague Paul Clist. Now, first of all, in this short video, I'm going to give you quite a few examples about the kind of thing that we cover in QED and why this is useful, whichever perspective you're taking within the School of Dev. After those examples, there'll be some more concrete details about how it fits into courses, any requirements there might be, the learning aims, the teaching methods, and that weekly timetable pattern you can expect of classes. And then finally, assessment details. So, before we get to that, we'll start off with some examples. And I started with this beautiful image of a tiger, a very beautiful creature, a very wonderful creature, admittedly a very dangerous creature, and sadly a very threatened creature with only around 3,000 or so left in the entire world. Now you can analyse this from a variety of different perspectives, but somewhere you might like to start with, if you're interested in conservation of this kind of creature, is, well, how many are there left now in the world, and where exactly are they in the world? So quantitative data can give you a really good angle on this. So we can look at where they're distributed, for example, in the South Asia continent here in India. And we've got details here on where they are. The colours are showing you the areas of highest concentrations in terms of numbers of animals per kilometre, square kilometre. You can put that onto a clustered bar chart like this, and if you take a couple of seconds to look at this, you'll see, well, there's some grounds for optimism in that numbers seem to be going up in different areas. Dig a bit deeper into the data, and there's some controversy about this, some disputes about how it's being measured. And if you read the research on this, again, there's quantitative stuff with a scatter graph here, looking at the relationship between the number of animals they know are in an area and the tiger's signs, which could be remains of kills, footprints, cameras, and so on, how that relates to the actual number of tigers. And there's arguments about whether it's being optimistically recorded in some areas. So the figures are a bit disputed, but to understand those disputes, you need to get into this quantitative evidence. So the kind of questions you might ask then is, okay, what steps can we take? What is effective in terms of protection, and what are the threats that maybe bring the numbers down? Now, clearly with tigers, it's forests is the ideal habitat for them. They thrive in areas of rich diversity. This particular tiger is a Sumatran tiger, and Sumatra's got this wonderful, rich, lush rainforest, but we see that, of course, has been under threat. So if you're interested in how many tigers there are, this is clearly one thing which is going to be one of the threats. And you might like to list up some of the factors. You can get data, what factors are helping the tigers, what factors are hindering them. Here's some of the things that might be threatening them, some of the things that might be hindering them. So you can get data on that, but the analysis then gets tough because, of course, all these things are affecting the number of tigers, some pushing it up, some pushing it down, some might be having conflicting effects depending on what kind of tourism, for example, you have. So the kind of things we equip you with in QED is ways that you might be able to untangle the separate effects here and see which ones could policy try to address to help the tigers. You may have come across the ideas in previous modules of empirical and causal claim. So an empirical claim is how many tigers are there? Are they going up or down? Where are they? A causal claim is what's pushing those numbers up and down. And that's where policy comes in, because it's those things that we can try and affect, hopefully positively. So now we switch continents, get the slides to respond, across to Togo here in West Africa, and we have women here that are involved in a trade of selling these amazing African batik fabrics, which are very popular across West Africa and in fact across the whole African continent. And these women, they're making batiks which are manufactured in Ghana, largely other West African factories using African designs, some of them European-owned factories, but the manufacturing taking place in West Africa. And they were known as Mama Bens, these women traders, because of their popular reputation they had for one of the things they like to do when they made a good business is to buy one of these Mercedes-Benz high-end cars. But recently they've had problems because of cheap imports, particularly from China, which they're finding it hard to compete with. So again, we can get data on this and see what's going on. Obviously, things that affect it are going to be the price of those China fabrics coming in, the exchange rate, which will affect that, what they have to pay in terms of their local currency, taxes. Can the government maybe tax the Chinese ones more, or tax the women's trade less, fuel taxes and so on? Wage levels, okay, if wages go up, then the women are going to have to pay more, it's going to hit their business, but also people will be able to afford to buy the boutiques more, so it might be good for them. So it gets complicated. The fuel price affects the fuel for the transporting of their goods around the country, and of course the fuel for their Mercedes, and then the harvest size. In a year when there's good harvests, could be that people have got more money to buy fabrics, but it could be that will they decide to buy more of the local ones or more of the Chinese ones. So again, QED is a module which is going to give you the tools to take data on all these things and sort out, okay, what's really having a big effect here? Is it a causal effect or not? In terms of analysing what the situation is, where is there space for policy to improve the situation? Okay. Next example, we're looking more at the area of media, this kind of modern media. It's interesting with media to analyse the content, as you will do in some of your media courses if you take those. But if you're trying to understand the scope and the detail of trends across a global scale, then quantitative data can really add a lot to this. So this is an amazing study where they looked at Facebook pages on particular social and political issues. So these things here, this one is the process in Turkey that took place when Erdogan was attempting to change the use of a park, for example. So it's political areas, information, news, humanitarian, World Wildlife Fund. They were looking at these different areas and saying, okay, let's get Facebook pages on those. They found 1 million Facebook pages related to these things and 50 million likes. So you can't analyse that in any other than a quantitative way by looking at 50 million likes from across 1 million pages. On this table already, you can see they've broken it down in terms of ages and distribution geographically. Then the next page, what they've done is they've tried to break it down, look at, okay, is there any difference in terms of what topics people are liking? And also the split between the ages and the sexes. Just at a glance on this, we can see that the rainforest one at the bottom seems to be one area where across the age ranges, there's more women getting involved and liking that. In most of the others, there tends to be a slight predominance of men, except when you look within the age ranges again, you see that the younger age groups, there's more women, actually, in fact, women dominating some of them. And as in the older age ranges, it again becomes more male dominated. But it changes between different topics, and some topics are more or less male dominated. Now, if you're reading this, you can see that from a chart, but you can dig a bit deeper and look into the text. You see things like this coming up. And this part in the middle, they say, okay, here we conducted a one-sample t-test between percentages. We found a significant effect for gender with T, 299,999 is 88.78, P is 0.00. Now, having done the QED module, you're going to be able to look at stuff like this and understand this kind of thing. So I can understand how that's adding to what this thing's telling me, what this means in terms of the results, and whether the results apply beyond the sample, whether there's a causal relationship here. You'll be able to criticize it instead of understanding, yeah, okay, well, the assumptions for a t-test, have they been met or not? So it'll really empower you as a reader. And these kind of things are used so extensively across policy relevant areas that it's a useful a tool to have. Okay, my final example is in the area of politics. So one crucial area for politics is the discussion about legitimacy of the government in using the government's monopoly over force to provide justice for its citizens. So for different kind of crimes and infringements, what's the appropriate punishment for that? And these people are writing, they're particularly interested in what's the effect when the government doesn't have a monopoly of violence, when there's been various social unrest, civil conflict, civil war in the area. How does that then affect people's perceptions and the way they campaign for the government to provide justice in those areas? So they've got, again, a lot of data, and this is something we look at in QED. Is data can be very scientific looking when it's in a table, but where does that data come from originally? Now, here they've given focus groups these illustrations to try and get data on different types of crime. So how clear is this to you that one crime here is theft, one is rape, one is domestic violence? So they're getting people to think about these 3 different crimes, and then here they generated the data on what's the preferred kind of punishment in terms of severity. So instead of just saying, okay, on a scale of 1 to 5, how severe, they gave them these diagrams. Okay, it could be a good talking to from a local elder, could be fine, could be being expelled from village, could be put into prison, or at the extreme end, like being beaten by a mob and possibly even killed. So what's the severity level that goes with each of those? Then they got into the statistics and tried to match up how these things relate to each other. So what's the preferred punishment for each crime, and is it related to whether or not there's been armed conflict in these areas? So they selected areas with and without armed conflict in the recent history. But it's not just a simple thing you can put on a scatter graph, because there's all these other factors. The opinions differ between men and women on average. On education, that had an effect as well. They had to look at that. They also had to take into account how much social interaction was there between people. Are they living in a remote area or a village centre where there's a lot of interaction? Were they answering this questionnaire in similar groups of people with similar level of education, or was it a very diverse group? That all had an impact. And again, QED is going to give you the tools to work out, okay, how are all those separate things influencing it, and how is armed conflict having an effect? And then what that then comes out in is this. Now, this is the kind of table of statistical results that you're going to see it's in across the social and natural sciences. You get tables of results like this. And in this one here, it's telling us for each of these three crimes, rape, domestic violence and stealing, how all these factors like conflict, sex, education, how are those having an effect on the punishment for these different things? And having done QED, you'll be able to understand, okay, what's this telling me? What are the limitations of it? What are the assumptions that's necessary here? And as I say, every area of policy, human policy making in the world has been informed by these kind of statistical results. So if you can understand that, that gives you an in to all those kind of policy discussions. So let's go on now, before the video finishes, then back to some more concrete details about the QED module. Well, as I said, it's a level 5 methods module in Dev, available on all Dev courses as an option. There's only one in the economics course. If you're doing that with economics, then you have to do this one. But everybody else, it's one of your options you can do. It's also open and increasingly popular with non-Dev students. There's no prerequisites, so there's no particular module you have to do in order to do this QED module. So it's open to everybody, level 5. It doesn't need advanced level maths. There's no calculus, nothing complicated like that. It is, however, it's useful if at least you can use a simple formula. So there's a few simple formulas we use for the tests. Substitute in the numbers, come up with a calculation, what the result is. Approximately speaking, it's more or less what used to be GCSE grade B-ish, or a good grade C, level 5 plus. It's not saying if you got level 4 you shouldn't do it, but it might develop a bit beyond that. If you're at all unsure about it, just send me an email or Paul an email, say, what do you think this would fit me or not? But it's generally not a highly mathematical thing. But if you are someone that really hates anything to do with maths and numbers, you probably haven't even got this far. Okay, but it might not be for you. But rest assured, it's not highly demanding at the base level. If you are into advanced maths, you can really tank off like a rocket and go into really super advanced stuff. But it's not necessary. You can still get a really great score on it without knowing that. So the two main aims are, aim 1 is to read published quantitative research and other policy papers with critical understanding, like all the stuff I've just showed you. So you should be able to read that and understand it critically. Aim 2 is that's you do it yourself. So if you're doing some coursework, maybe your dissertation or other coursework, you've got something you're investigating, if you come and do a master's degree or a PhD, anything in the future studies, you can use data and analyze it yourself. And when you get into your career beyond that, these skills, I cannot emphasize enough, they are highly prized. The number of times I've written on people's references for jobs, they've done these modules, they've got data management skills, they can handle it. That's a really good advantage and edge you can give yourself for future applications because it's so widely used. And the tool we use for this aim, for this second aim, you applying the stuff, is called Stata. Or Stata. Usually it's pronounced to run with data. This program called Stata, which is, it's the #1 global statistics quantitative methods package. It's slightly more expensive than others because it is the #1, but we provide this free, and all the time you're at UEA you can install it for free on your computer. So you'll learn to use Stata. Absolutely amazing employability skill and useful for your future studies. You'll learn a variety of statistical tests for looking at these causal empirical claims. It's multivariate analysis, so you can take into account many different factors at once, which is courses essential in natural and social science. Regression is those tables of statistical results that show you how different factors connect together. You'll know how methods work. We'll teach you the formulas and all these things behind it, which will help you in your coursework and so on. Criticality, you can read what someone else has done and say, oh, that was a t-test, that was a chi-squared test. You'll understand what that means, You can get those lovely points for criticality in your coursework. But when you're doing the analysis yourself, you don't have to apply that. It's going to be Stata that does that for you. It's all built in. Stata does it. There's no fiddling around with calculators. Stata just does this stuff for you. Another reason it's a valuable employability skill is that the way you do it is not just by clicking buttons. You type in using these codes like this. Okay, do me a t-test, do me a graph, do me a correlation, using these very precise codes. So it does show this very disciplined analytical thinking. And of course, with today's emphasis on computer literacy skills, that's why it's valued, Stata. And just by putting in those kind of codes, you can say exactly what you want in terms of a graph, like this color here, this line here, this country here, this legend and so on. And then you can do your regression, which is how you can do those kind of tables yourself. And this is looking at digital literacy across African countries. And so digital literacy in terms of how confident people are at using internet sources of information through phones or computers. And these are some different factors you can put in. And again, once you've done QED, you'll know these numbers will speak to you and tell you about what kind of patterns we can see across Africa in terms of the factors that lead people to be more or less able to use the internet effectively, or what other subject you want to study. So, tremendously useful and practical applicable skills from the module. Final few details then. On teaching, there's going to be a weekly 2-hour workshop in class. Not a lecture, 2-hour workshop. Not just us talking to you, us doing things together and discussing things. So we'll discuss the published research like I've just showed you. What do you make of it? What came out of this? What were the problems with this research? What was it telling us? How could it be done differently? We review some simple statistical exercises designed to help you understand how things work. So lots and lots and lots of formative feedback on how you're doing, which is essential for this kind of thing. Lots of hands-on practice with Stata. You can bring it to the class. We'll bring it to the class, sharing it on the screen, looking at how that works. And lots of group activities, like things like measurement exercises together we can do in class to look at the quality of data that's getting into the computer in the first place. It's very much like a kind of flipped model in that we use all the class time for interactive discussion stuff instead of you just sitting there taking notes while we talk for 1 or 2 hours at you. So between classes, there's just, I couldn't list it all, there's an extensive amount of online learning material. So all kinds of things like short videos, online internet stuff with pop-up tips and so on. Extensive step-by-step instructions on using Stata and statistical exercises, and these readings. So you're reading published research and policy papers, seeing how they've used quantitative materials. And then each week we come together and discuss that. And then I think this is the final page, the assessment. There's just one assessment, a single assessment, which is handed in as a single thing. It's got 2 main parts to it with a bit of overlap. It's very structured, and it's about 15, 20 questions. We give you some articles, maybe 1 or 2 articles, in which they've used quantitative evidence, and then we give you a whole set of questions. They go, what's this chart showing? What's this table showing? What's this test they did here? And what are the limitations of that? And what is it telling us about causality, for example, the effects of policy? And then we give you some data which is on a similar subject. So if we've given you data, if we're asking you questions about conservation of tigers, for example, which we might, I suppose, we could then give you data on tigers, and then you can analyse it yourself. Carry out your own analysis using Stata and answer some questions on how that compares with the published studies. So you're doing both understanding the published work and doing your own analysis with Stata. So, thanks for watching. I hope you found that useful. Please do feel very free to email me with questions or to email my colleague Paul if you think you might be interested in the module. And I hope that whatever you do, have a great year. And I hope to see a lot of you on the QED module next year. Thanks for watching. Bye.